Personal Express Insurance.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's version of Business Mastery with John Hewitt and my special guest this week, Jack Seal. Jack, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, do you recall what year when you first found out about Jackson Hewitt and how you found out about it?
I did. It was in 1989. And after working 8 years in a Fortune 50 company in the financial area, we took on a partner, Dick Harrington, who was retiring as a plant manager, and we started a self-storage business in upstate New York. That was my first jump into self-employment. So as cold as it was up in New York, we were looking for something for the March quarter to fill in because it got slow with the self-storage business. There was a group of H&R Block franchises that came up for sale. The fellow had died and his son and daughter-in-law put it up for sale. We did some analysis, thought this is a great business, but what ended up happening is H&R Block, we didn't know this, but H&R Block buys back their franchises in the major cities. So it turned out we were bidding against H&R Block that did, I don't know, $2 billion of cash in the bank. So we lost that one, but in the process, found out about you and came down to Virginia Beach to talk about getting into the business. We like the business, getting into it with Jackson Hewitt.
So when you looked at Block and it fit in the seasonality of what you were doing, and anything else about the business that attracted you to income tax in general?
Yeah, I think the profit margins that were available, it was looked like a very attractive business. The way we did the analysis, and it seemed like it would fit in. And of course, we were, right near the major city, Rochester, and that's why we wanted to get involved. Yeah.
What was when you came on board, and what was the closest Jackson Hewitt to where you guys were located?
I think it must have been Syracuse. We were in Rochester. It must have been Syracuse, where Donna Halligan was a franchisee, and she was very helpful. We knew nothing about the tax business when we got in, but you had put together a great franchise system, a great system for us to follow. Not that we did all the time, but for us to follow, and it kind of helped us get through that first tax season. We really knew nothing about it, but everybody was, very helpful.
So what would you say the name recognition of the name in 1989 when you jumped on board, and Syracuse was at about 100 miles away?
Yes.
100 miles away was the closest location. What was the name record? If you said the name Jackson Hewitt, how many people would think tax service? What percent?
Yeah, at that time, maybe 10%, if we're lucky. I think at that time we had 225 locations plus or minus at that time, and the vision was, going up against the big behemoth H&R Block, and
So you started, how many offices did you open the first year?
We had 5 the first year, which if we knew then what we know now, that was, we did it, right? So there were.
No one told you maybe that was a little too much to bite off the first year?
No, and so I was kind of in charge of the tax part of it, and Dick was in charge of the personnel part. So, we had at least 2 of us doing this, but it was.
And you were working full time, and you were seasoned executives.
Yeah. And so we had the self-storage business again, which had grown pretty rapidly. So luckily, in that time of the year, it slows down.
So how long were you a franchisee in Rochester?
We had 4 seasons in Rochester, and then came down here to Virginia Beach to be in charge of operations for Jackson Hewitt. And we had grown at that time. So it was a very enjoyable journey. It's been a journey, been with you since 1989, and you know, it's been an enjoyable journey.
By my calculation, that's 35 years.
Yes.
So you moved down, you took over operations, and what happened to the locations in Rochester?
They ended up, I believe there was, I forget the guy's name. I think we ended up selling them to, I forget the fellow's name. Became a franchise.
Oh, that the largest eventual owner was Bill Thompson, but I don't know if he came on that early.
Okay.
And Bill retired sold it to his daughter about 10 years ago. So, and then she sold it to the company also to Jackson Hewitt. So you came down, and do you remember in the early years, do you remember our trip back to Rochester to Wegmans?
I do, very, very, very clearly.
What was that all about?
Well, there was and I think at that time, Wegmans, I think that was the only store that they had, if I remember correctly. But there was an article that came out in the Wall Street Journal talking about their level of customer service and customer focus. So we ended up going up there to just go into the store, get an idea of, what was the feeling around there? How did they do so well in their customer focus? And we took Steve, who was our field consultant in the area, and Steve was probably what, 20, 21 years old, maybe?
I had dinner with him a week ago today.
Okay.
And he was 24 years old.
24. So we went into Wegmans and just tried to get a feel for it, and walking around and talking to the employees. And I think you ended up at the seafood counter, and they had smelts. And so you got a big styrofoam box of smelts, and they offered to fry them for you, which you did. And do
you remember who went with us? You, me, and who else?
It was Steve, the field consultant.
No, but Steve was local. He was in Rochester. Yeah. Didn't someone from corporate come with us?
I'm not sure if that was possibly, was it Sue maybe?
I thought it was Rod McKinley.
It could have been. He was president at the time.
And to refresh your memory, Wegmans, the reason we went there is there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that Wegmans had an ungodly market share. It was like 70%. And it was so impressed that we went there to learn how to build a great company. Yeah. And they had dozens of locations in Rochester. I spent from the years 4 to 14, I don't talk about it too much, living in Rochester. And the one we went to was 1 mile from my house where I grew up. And so, but they had dozens of locations. And of course, now they've expanded greatly. They have their first one in Virginia Beach. And I guess they've continued the great service, because my 24-year-old son, John Jr., said, have you been in Wegmans? He was impressed. He was impressed 35 or 30 years later with Wegmans Virginia Beach. But you'll be happy to hear that Steve went on. He was a field consultant. He had just started in 1994 at Jackson Hewitt, right out of college. And he went on to become a franchisee at Jackson Hewitt. And this year, at the end of the season, sold them back to the company. And now I had dinner with him on Thursday, and true to the loyalty name, he's acquiring 3 franchisees or 3 franchises of Zoom and Grimman in Baltimore. So he's moved his family to Baltimore many years ago, and that's where he's been for most of all of the 21st century. And coincidentally, he's bringing in his 24-year-old daughter, who just finished college.
Wow.
So you see how we pay it forward with loyalty.
Right. Yeah. I look forward to seeing him.
Yeah, he's a great guy, great wife. The daughter was busy, unfortunately, but we look forward to teaming up with him again. But let me say, add a little bit of smelt before we go on. Smelt is a very little fish. About, I'm sure most people haven't had it. The only place I've ever seen it is upstate New York, near the Finger Lakes, and it's about as big as your thumb. And they cut off the head and they cut off the tail, and then they deep fry it and you eat the whole thing, bones and all. And these poor guys that were with me, they had, because I was CEO, they had to try it. And I don't think that, I know Steve hasn't because he mentioned it, but they probably never had another smelt the rest of their life. This is a very fishy kind of fish, and I guess it's kind of unique. Have you had smelt since then?
I have not.
Okay, good.
I really didn't want them then, and I haven't had them since.
It wasn't so good. You didn't go back up there looking for it.
No. And the look on Steve's face when you offered him some in the car,
Right.
he took them only because you were CEO.
Right. He was brand new. He was a rookie. He couldn't take a chance of offending me.
Right.
So then subsequently we left Jackson Hewitt, and we started Liberty Tax. Now, we really don't talk about, I don't talk about that journey of starting in Canada. But you were the maestro in that journey, and you did all the due diligence. You set up the meetings. Talk about how we happened to get to open in Canada, because whenever I tell my story, I just say, well, my non-compete didn't cover Canada, and so we went to Canada. But tell people how we did that.
Well, we, again, because of the non-compete, there was an operation in Canada that became available for sale, a retail tax operation. Now, the fellow
when you say became available, were they for sale when we called them already, or?
No, I don't think they were. I think it was, I'm not sure how we found out that they were struggling with that, because the main business that they had was a farm tax return business. Did something like 30,000 farm tax returns. Decided to get into when it was called U&R, Urban and Rural Tax Depot, and Gary had bought that, thinking they could run this retail tax operation with 125 locations.
Who's Gary?
Gary Ibbotson is the guy. I guess he was second generation with the farm business, and so they had bought U&R Tax Depot. I recall it was 125 locations across Canada. Didn't do well. It was a franchise. Didn't do well with that, and so we ended up going up there. How we found out, I'm not sure, but making an offer to purchase that from Gary, so that we could, then go in and look to grow it. And Gary,
before you go on, let me add a couple of points. The U&R had gone bankrupt, and Gary bought it out of bankruptcy.
okay.
And so he was running it from afar. Gary and Farm Bureau were headquartered in Calgary, and U&R was in Winnipeg. So they had bought a bankrupt organization, and from the founders. And then that's when we get involved. Do you remember the trip up? I mean, it was totally surprising, our first trip up there when we were in Vegas, going to I think we probably met them in Calgary, right?
I think we did, and that was the time of year they had black ice there. But leaving Vegas, contrary to what can happen today, in order to get, have a visa or whatever to be able to get into another country, to get into Canada, I think all just had to show them a driver's license.
Well, actually, what I recall is we showed up at the airport, and we were taking an evening flight, a late flight, like 9 o'clock at night, and going to meet with them the next day. And you had to have you had to have something like a passport or something, or they said, and I was like, well, we don't have that. And they said, well, here, you have to sign a statement saying that you really are a citizen of the US and that's all. I mean, we just had to sign a statement saying we were a citizen of the US. And of course, this was way before 9/11, so 9/11, so there was no customs or there's no TSA at the airport, but the customs was not very rigorous, because all you had to do is say, here, sign this, I am a US citizen. Okay, where do I sign? Right. So we went up and met with them, and we learned about plugging in your battery at night in the car. It was, I think it was February. Yeah, it must have been February, because you had offices at Jackson Hewitt in Vegas, and that's why we were flying out of Vegas.
Right.
And Gary made a great offer. I mean, tell him the offer that he made to us to partner with us.
So, we offered, he ended up, and I think it was because he believed in your ability to franchise. He knew about you. And so what we were trying to do was to get 100% of the company. And we were going to put in, a certain amount of money as working capital, and, we would get 100%. Well, Gary came back and he said, yeah, that's great. However, I want to keep 40%. And oh, by the way, because we were doing a private placement for Liberty. He said, by the way, I want to, I'll take the whole 100% of the private placement. And at that time, you had said, well, there are a number of people that want to invest, so we'll only give you 25%. And each time that there was a subsequent round, he would maintain his percentage. And I think had grown that at some point to close to 50% ownership, if I remember. Yeah.
It was over 40, yeah.
Yeah. So he was just a great partner with us, and just a wonderful human being. And we had gone up to Calgary. He had a place that was off of Canada Route 1. I think he had a 2,000-acre ranch up there, and we had gone. He said, come for dinner. He was out cooking steaks, and just, just a normal, down-to-earth guy. So he was a great partner for us.
Yeah, billionaire.
Yeah.
And think of what's Yellowstone. I mean, he had this huge cattle ranch. It was nothing like Yellowstone, but it was right at the foot of the Rockies. The Rockies were in sight. So it was a beautiful cattle ranch, and he was a great partner for most of the next 20 years at Liberty. So we got a partner, and we inexpensively got control of the second largest Canadian firm, and we changed the name subsequently to Liberty. And about that same time, we were assembling a team of executives from Jackson Hewitt who joined us at Liberty. Remember, who was the initial team?
It was us. It was Martha O'Gorman. Donna Halligan was in there, and I think Kathleen, the attorney, came very shortly after that. And
yeah, Kathleen made a deal that the four of us left in December, and the Kathleen came after the Texas.
Right.
Now, do you remember we some of us sat at a restaurant and came up with we decided that if you got to start all over again and build another chain, national chain or international chain, you should be able to do it a lot better. And what are we going to do different? Do you remember who was at that meeting and where it was?
I think that one was you and me and Martha. And We sat, was Donna there? I can't remember if Donna was there or not. And we sat down with a napkin and wrote down what we're going to do different, what we're going to do better. And that napkin, I think, is still somewhere in the archives somewhere. For the things
I have it.
you have it. Okay.
Unlike the next one, when we started Loyalty, which is framed on my wall, but I have it in boxed away in antiquities.
Yeah.
So we sat down, we came up with the things we're going to do different, and we came back to the United States in 2000. Do you remember anything significant about when our grand opening splash in 2000?
We started in, it was at May 1st of 1999, which was our New Year's Day, if you will. So what we did was to offer in the season to offer, if I remember, tax returns for $19.99. During that first tax season. So we had started. We looked to see if we could purchase some, existing mom and pops, but also started. We had already started 5 locations in Columbus, Ohio. Couple locations in Seattle and in the Tri-Cities of Tennessee. So we had some locations there to start, but yeah, it was $19.99 for the tax return. And
Block decided to punish us and try to hurt us. And so back then they had a refund anticipation loan. And they decided, in order to shut John Hewitt up and shut Liberty down, we're going to do, even though the industry standard was $49, we're going to give it for free in all of Virginia Beach area, because, Hewitt's bragging that he's going to be number one and blah, blah, blah. They call me a shameless self-promoter. And I think, Jack, would you agree with that I am kind of a shameless self-promoter?
Yeah, I'll agree with that for
okay.
sure.
Good. Right. So they're always trying to shut me up and hold me back. And so it was the only time in all the lawsuits I've been involved in, and the more successful you are, the more you get sued. But it was the only time anyone but attorneys made money. We got them for false advertising. Because even though they didn't say it was a loan, and they didn't give any of the disclosures required with the loan, and even though they didn't charge up front, they did. If the loan wasn't repaid, you had penalties and charges, and just like a loan. So it had all the characteristics of a loan, except for there was no upfront fee. So we got them for false advertising.
Yeah, well, I remember that was Judge Jackson, and he, I think he favored us as the little guys, if you will, and
yeah, it was a court here in town.
Yeah,
and they had to come from Kansas City, the big guys with the suits with the half a dozen attorneys, where we had our little one man show, and the little guy often gets the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So along that ride, so you were there from the beginning and up until the end, for 18 years. Or all the way rather till we started our first tax season in Canada was 88, and so our last season in the US was 18. So for 21 years, and then we got to start all over again.
Right. It's been, yeah, the journey has been just awesome. So just third company, and this is going to be bigger than the other two. So it's been an awesome ride.
So the Jackson Hewitt's a household name, 5,000 locations or 6,000 locations. Liberty got to 4,000. And you also recently acquired a franchise of one of our brands. So what brand did you acquire?
Well, actually, there are two. Right?
Okay,
So ended up getting a Zoom and Grumman down in Raleigh in a partnership there, but also acquired a Ledger's location here in Virginia Beach. So we actually have two brands.
and Zoom and Grumman, what kind of business is that?
Zoom and Grumman is a mobile pet grooming business that has really just taken off. I mean, it's I think, what was it, August of 2021, we had our first franchise, first
August
VR
18th,
franchise.
August 18th, yep.
Yeah. And so at this point, we have 160 vans on the road. I'm going to get this wrong, but 29 states that we're in.
You did get it wrong.
Yeah.
It's 26 states.
26. Okay. And it's growing exponentially.
And my belief is it will be the third household name that we've been involved with, that you and I have been involved with building.
Yeah.
It'll be between Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax, and now Zoom and Grumman, and hopefully we'll get some of the others up there too, like Ledgers and ATAX and some of the other brands. But it's amazing when you get to be part of something that changes the face of the country. Now, as part of starting loyalty, we took some people with us. And who do we take with us this time? When we left Liberty, who came with us this time?
So again, Martha came with us this time.
Subsequently, there's many more, right?
Oh yeah, I'm doing like there are a lot of former
Right. We have, if we include franchisees, right, that have bought, most of them, the ex-Liberty people have bought into the pet part of the business.
Right.
But some have bought Leisure, some have acquired ATAX, but we're up over 4 dozen of our former Liberty. And I mentioned Steve Wines. There's a couple that skipped over Liberty and came straight from Jackson Hewitt. So it's I guess I left Block too long ago for there to be anyone that skipped all of them, because that was in 1980, 81. So that's quite a while ago. And there's a few of us still walking around that were effective business people in 1981. So so we sat down, did the same thing, back of the napkin. Do you recall any the most in either of those lists? Do you recall the most important to you?
In my mind, the most important thing was never go public.
Yeah, we were eviscerated a bit at the end of Liberty being a public company.
Yeah,
and Sarbanes-Oxley is so onerous. We were paying just the cost of all the extra accounting and paperwork you have to do to be a public company. We're paying like $4 million a year.
Yeah.
And anything else? Any customer things or that come to mind?
I think we've kind of always had a customer focus, but one of the things that changed, and this is actually in Liberty days as well, but it was looking to our mission statement: having fun, improving lives. So it's a commitment to improving people's lives.
Is Tanya there with you?
Yes.
Can you have her run in my office and get the napkin?
Okay.
It's on the ledge behind my desk, I think. And so you can read some of the top 10 if you can read my writing. You can show people what great handwriting I have, right? The only bad grade I ever got in school before 6th grade was handwriting. I got a D one time in handwriting, and it never improved. Oh, you can't see it for some reason.
No, hang on a minute.
We're unable to see it.
I'm unable. Yeah.
Oh,
That's funny.
oh,
Hang on, Tanya's gonna fix it.
just a second. Let's see.
There you go. We can see it. All right.
Okay.
Oh, not anymore.
Why-
Well, you get the hint. So why don't you read them?
Okay, so there it is.
There it goes. Good.
Can you see the,
It says, don't go public. No going public.
so can you see the extraordinary handwriting?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
I'll put this back to what it was. So it says no going public was number one. Number two, connect with the Z's, make sure that we have a connection. The franchisees are the most important, the most important, for,
yeah, I think we still need to work on that we don't do a good enough job as a company of understanding what the Z's goals are and staying in touch with those on a monthly basis.
right. And start the area representative program day one, which back in Liberty days, that was, I think you've said that was one of your
It's my number one mistake.
Yeah. And started that with Liberty after 2003, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It took me 5 years to start it.
Yeah. And so in 12 years grew to 4,000 locations. So start AD day one, which we've done. Happy, successful franchisees and employees.
And I want to add to that one. I mentioned on this show before that after we left Liberty, and big letters coming into the main building, it said, when you first come in, on the wall, painted on the wall, happy, successful franchisees. And within a month, they whitewashed the wall and which is how they felt about franchisees after we left. And that's why in 6 years, they've lost half of the franchises out of the system in just 6 years.
Said listening is both ways. We have to listen, the franchisee has to listen, same for any stakeholders. Listen both ways.
And I added both ways to that, Jack, because every single person that is a franchisee or becomes a franchisor, every employee, I added it from my vantage point that most CEOs aren't good listeners, and therefore their companies suffer. And I believe that's one of my best traits. But if you want me to listen to you, then you got to listen to me too. It works both ways. So I'm committed to listen, but I need you to be committed to listen too. So that's why I added the part about both ways.
Well, all three companies, we've had an annual convention. And the one thing that I really like about the way that, with your guidance and all the way we do things, is that convention is intended to get feedback from the franchisees. They're the ones that are closest to the customer. So, we don't hold out any hope that we would know more about what the customer wants than those people that are down there dealing with the customer day in and day out. And so we look for feedback from the franchisees on how to improve the system. It's kept our system dynamic, and it's been, and I think the franchisees appreciate being heard. So what we would do, I remember this at Jackson Hewitt, we would have, after convention, probably 2,000 suggestions. And we'd go through, and within 2 weeks, we'd go through every one of them and either, yes, we can do it. We can do it in the future when we get the resources, or no, and we're not going to do it, but we'd give the reason why. And we would feed all of this back to the franchisees so they knew that they were listened to.
I skipped the important part of the story of in 1998 or 99, you and I and Martha were crossing the border. And you almost got us thrown in jail for life. Do you want to tell us what you did wrong?
I was being totally honest, right? Came across in the border, and it
And you were driving.
I was driving, and the border patrol asked if I had anything, including tobacco, and I'm a smoker. So I said, yeah.
They asked you have a tobacco or guns, I think.
Right. So said, well, yeah, I have some tobacco. And so then they made us pull over, had to get my suitcase out, went inside, took, I don't know, a couple of hours of them questioning me. And I don't think you two were very happy about that whole thing, but finally they thought
Well, the handcuffs were not a good look on Martha.
So it was just out of being honest to them that we ended up getting a 2-hour wait. But
Now, do you recall on the way driving back, did you admit the truth or tell a white lie on the way back? Do you recall?
yeah, I think a white lie is probably the way to put it, right?
Fortunately, we made it without being jailed overnight. So, you want to read any other important ones on there you should read?
Well, there's one that we have, it's no culture killers. And the reason is because the culture is, it has been since the beginning, such an important part of the company. It's a culture of us working together. It's a culture of doing what's best for the franchisees. I mean, one of our current principles is finding a way to say yes. And by putting the franchisees and the employees, by putting them first, that's part of the culture that makes us successful.
Yeah, and culture kills a person, right? And so I had to fire someone a couple of years ago, and I said, you fired yourself. No one likes you. I mean, you fight with everyone. Yeah. I mean, I'm not here firing you. You fired yourself. You don't get along with Jack. You don't get along with Martha. You don't get along with John Allen. You don't get along with anyone. So what we made that was our commitment to move more quickly to have people that didn't fit in with a positive attitude and a good working spirit, and someone you wanted to be around, then move them out more quickly, because they're going to fool us sometime and sneak in the organization.
Yeah, right. And that, and the other thing along those lines is that, and you've preached this from the beginning, is you have to measure results and not activities. And results are the most important thing. And if somebody does something a different way from the way that I would do it, doesn't mean that it's the wrong way. And there's an opportunity to learn there. So it's just looking at the results that are achieved is the most important thing.
Awesome. Well, great journey, 38 years. We probably won't make it another 38, but we're going to build our third top 100 retail chain in the country, and if not more. And no one else has been able to do more than one. So let the excitement continue. Any last thoughts?
No, it's just, as I said, it's been for 35 years, just been an awesome journey. Honored to have been part of it, and looking forward to the next, however long is still left.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Bye now. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.